لكن تحديت الظروف وخضتها وحدي صبورا مستعينا بالصلاة. كم مرة عصف الأنين بداخلي، كم مرة قد ذاق قلبي من أسى محن تمر، وكم كرهت مصابها.
And the majority of the Saudi Peninsula, the Arabian Peninsula was taken by the Sheikh and his students. The only place they didn't have control over was Mecca and Medina. Every other place they took over. Because they entered into Mecca and Medina and they took over بعد وفاة الشيخ, when the Sheikh died. Mecca and Medina, they entered it after he died. And that was when Saud Ibn Abdul Aziz Ibn Muhammad Ibn Saud took over. He's the one who was able to take over Mecca and Medina. The Shaykh rahimahullah, from the effects and mashallah, the benefits that came out of his da'wah was that, of course, that the Amatul Jazirat al-Arabiya was taken over. The majority of the Arabian Peninsula had now fallen under the banner of Tawheed. Shirk was destroyed, fully eradicated. Also, the Shaykh rahimahullah, he left behind students of knowledge, talabatul ilm. That even if he goes and he dies, his message hasn't died. And this is what he worked towards. He left behind students of knowledge. He left behind people who would carry on the message that the Shaykh was calling to.
So as you heard, Ustad Abdulrahman Hassan mentioned the Da'wat al-Najdiyyah, which I like to call the Forefathers of ISIS. He mentioned the story of them taking Mecca and Medina, and he mentioned the name Saud Ibn Abdul Aziz Ibn Muhammad bin Saud. Now, you just got they took over Mecca and Medina. You know how he made it so casual, so brief, they took it over. Why didn't you not read on? You must have read from the primary sources, so why did you miss that? Do you know how they took it over? Do you know the mass murders and the barbarians that they were? You had the quotes. You must have had it. Because there's no way that you could have read that without even explaining how they took it and the brutal manner in which they took it. Mecca and Medina. Okay? So he mentions in the year 1220, okay, Hijri, and 1805 Gregorian, okay, 1805 Gregorian, it mentions that in this year there was a drought. You know, there was a drought. For Mecca, the matter was bad. As we mentioned before, because of the war that they had and the siege. And they cut off food and supplies. And he goes, because that was, the treaty was voided by Ghalib and Saud. So that was, the treaty was voided between him and this guy. And, you know, that's the reason why they went. And he says, they basically cut off the pathways, all of it, from Mecca to the direction of Yemen, Tihama, Hijaz, Najd. So they controlled all of these areas. Okay, they controlled all of these areas. And what happened? Okay, what happened, Ustad Abdulrahman Hassan? That it was so bad, the situation was so bad that the people of Mecca started eating dogs because they blocked up all the pathways. They put them under siege and war, and they didn't allow any food to go in. So the people of Mecca were starving, okay, because these bandits, these forefathers of Daesh, didn't allow any supplies to go in. So they basically starved them to death. And they were forced to eat dogs. And then he says that so many people died of hunger. Okay, so many people died of hunger. So I'm going to ask you now, Ustad Abdulrahman Hassan, why did you miss that out? Huh? Why did you miss that out?
And the majority of the Saudi Peninsula, the Arabian Peninsula, was taken by the Sheikh and his students. The only place they didn't have control over was Mecca and Medina. Every other place they took over. Because they entered into Mecca and Medina and they took over بعد وفاة الشيخ, when the Sheikh died. Mecca and Medina, they entered it after he died. And that was when Saud Ibn Abdul Aziz Ibn Muhammad Ibn Saud took over. He's the one who was able to take over Mecca and Medina. The Shaykh rahimahullah, from the effects and mashallah, the benefits that came out of his da'wah was that, of course, the Amatul Jazirat al-Arabiya was taken over. The majority of the Arabian Peninsula had now fallen under the banner of Tawheed. Shirk was destroyed, fully eradicated.
Oh, they just took Mecca and they took Medina. Don't worry, we're going to play it back once we talk about Medina. Now the question is what happened in Medina? What did they do in Medina? So they took Mecca, they made them, starved them to death. And wait till Takfeeri Tendencies Part 3. What did Saud do when he entered into Mecca? Okay? That's a different story altogether. Don't worry, everything's going to be explained. These bandits didn't stop, did they? It mentions that Saud basically went to the direction of Medina. Okay? And on the way, they took Ghanima. So hold on, they're fighting Muslims, so they must have been Murtaddeen, because you can't take Ghanima from Muslims. Okay? And they took a lot of Ghanima as well. That was nice. On the way, a little loot, let's just rob people. And close to the Jabal of Uhud, okay, they met the Turks, the Ottoman Turks. Okay? And when they met the Ottoman Turks, okay, they fought. Okay? And when they fought, they killed roughly about 30 knights. And the Turkish army fled. Okay, the Turkish army fled. Then he says Saud went to another place. Okay, listen to this. These are nice, these people, were these Dawat al-Najdiyyah, which Ustad Abdulrahman Hassan trying to avoid telling you about. So they went to another place, and what did they do? They started burning palm trees and started killing men. Nice, Saud. Okay, Saud bin Abdul Aziz bin Muhammad bin Saud. Ustad Abdulrahman Hassan, you didn't want to mention any of that, did you? Okay, nice. Ustad Abdulrahman Hassan, there's a common pattern, isn't it? A common theme that you're missing out a lot of stuff, and you're distorting a lot of stuff, aren't you, son? So realistically, mate, you got a lot of explaining to do. So if you're going to say, okay, hypothetically, let me see your argument. Oh, I didn't have to mention all of it. Well, yeah, you do, because you need to condemn it. You need to condemn these atrocities. But then, no, are you a closet Takfeeri? I said, are you? I'm not saying you are. Are you a closet Takfeeri? Did they, when they took Ghanima, you do know, Shara'an, you could only take Ghanima from those who are Murtaddun or Kuffar. So when they went to Medina, again, what happened in Mecca, you know what happened in Mecca. You know what happened in Mecca. So don't even try to hide it, because I'm presenting Takfeeri Tendencies Part 3. So don't even bother trying to hide this information. But when they went to Medina, they started just killing people. On the way, they took some ghanima. They went, a nice one. We just need to, whatever you got, give it to us. And what happens what did the Prophet ﷺ warn us about when terrifying the people of Medina? Huh? What did the Prophet ﷺ say? In my hand, I've got Imam Ahmed in his Musnad. And as you can see on screen, this is hadith number 16,510. That he mentions a narration from Sa'ibi bin Khalladin anna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Man akhafa ahl al-Madinah, that whoever puts fear into the hearts of the people of Medina or terrorizes the people of Medina, dhulman, okay, with oppression, أخافه الله وعليه لعنة الله وملائكة والناس أجمعين لا يقبل الله منه يوم القيامة صرفا ولا عدلا. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ says, whoever terrorizes the people of Medina with oppression, Allah will terrorize him. The curse of Allah, the angels and the people altogether will be upon him, and Allah will not accept his obligatory or voluntary good deeds on the day of resurrection. Why did you miss that information out, Ustad Abdulrahman Hassan? You notice there's a theme. There's a theme.
You see the level of deception? You see the deceit? Mentioning the story, now again, in order for him to transmit or to inform you about the takeover of Mecca and Medina from the primary sources, he would have to go and read no other than the books that were written by the eyewitnesses and those who were there, i.e. Tarikhun Najd or Anwanul Majd by Ibn Ghannam and Ibn Bishr. So if he had that information in front of him, because remember, if I know, I've read the chapter, it's based on the years. So 1206, 1207, 1208, 1209, and then it explains what happened. This is clear, or from what's apparent anyway, that Abdulrahman Hassan is an absolute fraud. Because the details of them taking over Mecca was, I think, yes, in Anwan al-Majd, because Tariq al-Najd doesn't cover that period. Potentially Ibn Ghannam died before then. So the details of the story of the takeover of Mecca is in Anwan al-Majd, as you've just read. He ignored and missed out what was before the siege and what Saud bin Abdul Aziz bin Muhammad bin Saud prepared. Obviously, there's a full account there. And then also what happened when he took it over. And then what happened when they entered. As you watch from Takfeeri Tendencies Part 3, Saud bin Abdul Aziz bin Muhammad bin Saud, as you can see on screen, made the ulama and the mashayikh of Mecca, who are obviously Hanafis, Maliki, Shafi'i, and from the Hanbalis. They obviously were present at that time. He forced them to write a fatwa, in essence saying that what they're doing is correct. The dawa of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahab is obviously anyone that doesn't agree with their methodology, and what they did in Egypt and in Medina and all elsewhere was correct. It was allowed for them to spill their blood because they were murtadun, etc., and take their wealth and take their possessions. So, Abdulrahman Hassan, now that we've ironed this out, okay, we're consistently highlighting your level of deceit and your lack of sincerity when it comes to transmission of the sources. It is unacceptable. And now that we've corrected you, because at the end of the day, it's not about exposing as such, but when you play maliciously, then yes, we will expose you. And as I stated before, it's accountability time now. We will hold you to account. Any distortions, any deceit will be highlighted by myself, and I will continuously do this because you had a good run for a while, and we are now clapping back, as I always said. So now that let's move away from that. You have to come out publicly and correct your deceit. You will have to come out and accept that Muhammad bin Abdul Wahab and the early Da'wah to Najdiyyah are radicals and extremists and are the forefathers of ISIS. If you don't want to mention that the forefathers of ISIS, because I know that will give you an anxiety or angina, whatever you want to call it, we want you to come out and at least say that those attacks were completely abhorrent, mass murder, legitimizing Muslim blood, stealing their possessions was the modus operandi of the Da'wah to Najdi and Muhammad Abdul Wahab, as we already proved. So you need to come out and condemn these actions. You were the one that transmitted the story, and you didn't do a good job of it, did you? Because you were trying to avoid this part and that part. So now that we've made that clear, it is time for you to now at least, come on, you can't be silent. You want to expose Daesh and ISIS, which you should and you do, which is great, and you did a full 2-hour video of it and highlighting their ghulu and the extremism. You were willing to come out and do that. Now that we're showing you the root of it, which is your spiritual forefather, Muhammad Abdul Wahab, and the early Da'wah to Najdiyyah, silence. So your silence is acceptance, not just you, all of you. Every single one of you that comes out and, condemns and refutes the mutatarrifun, the extremism or the extremists, for the extremism, but Muhammad Abdul Wahab gets a free pass. So if anyone did the atrocities that Muhammad bin Abdul Wahab committed and his bandits, you will come out and openly refute it and make bara from it. And you will label them extremists, which you have the right to, and we would agree with you. So why don't you come out here? You see? Because you silently approve of it. You are closet takfiris. So let's leave it to that. We got more videos coming on this genre. It's plenty more. And it shows that they will never quote from those sources. Durar Sunniya, Rasail al-Shakhsiyya, all of these books. There's plenty of others that I can't even think at the top of my head. You got obviously the book of the Mawalat, about those who do not make takfir on the people of Ishraq, blanket takfir on those who, aid the Ottoman Empire. There's loads. That's why you don't quote them, the early Da'wah to Najdiyyah. You don't quote them because they're the forefathers of ISIS. But anyway, let's leave it as that. Take care of yourselves. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad.
آمنت أن الآخرة لا بد يوما آتية كل الخلائق حاضرة كل السرائر بادية في موقف ما أعظم لم تخف منهم خافية والهول فيهم قد بدا الشمس منهم دانية في موقف ما أعظم لم تخف منهم خافية والهول فيهم قد بدا الشمس منهم دانية لا ذل إلا ذله فيه النفوس الزادية بشرى لنفس آمنت تأتي بنور ساعد